welcome along to another Woodstock Resin Works video. In this video we're going to be looking at doing some more coasters. I'm going to tell you or show you how to make beautiful coasters the very simple and easy way. So you just saw me there knocking up the first bit of the mould, and I'm going to walk you through it. I appreciate that not everybody has got the tools that I've got, but you should be able to make everything that I'm doing now with stuff that you can just buy from the hardware store, or your Home Depot store, or wherever you go. So just walk you through what we're doing. So as you saw there, we've started off with a flat bit of chipboard, very cheap. You can buy this at any sort of a Home Depot store. You can use anything you like. The chipboard is not the important part. The important part is the tape on there, and that is just cheap packing tape. Everyday cheap packing tape works perfectly well. You don't need any fancy tapes or anything like that. You can just use cheap brown packing tape. Now moving on to the wood, I'm lucky that I've got some leftover walnut here that I've chopped down into sizable manageable pieces that we're going to put in here, and we're going to make the coasters 100 by 100, that's in millimeters, 100 by 100 squared, and they at the moment they're 650 long. Now we're going to make 6 coasters out of each one, so that'll be 6, 12, 18 on this particular mold. We're going to put one colour in each of them, and simplicity is what we want. It's nice and easy, and they'll come out really beautiful. So I've got some building work going on in the background, I'm sorry about the sound. But yeah, moving on. So next thing we need to do, we need to cut these down to size, we need to tape them up, clean them up, tape them up. Doing is we're oversizing. Okay, so we're going to, because the coasters are 100 each and we're making 6 out of each one. Okay, so we're going to oversize it, so we're making them 650 to start with, and that will give us scope later on to chop them down. Okay, so you want to make the mold a little bit wider and a little bit longer for whatever size you're doing. If you're only making 3, obviously make it 340, 350, something like that, but give yourself enough room so that you can cut them later on. Making coasters in multiples rather than just one at a time in a coaster mold, I find this the easiest way. All this stuff is reusable, so once you've bought most of this stuff, if you don't use it for anything else, I use molds multiple times on multiple projects, but if you're just making coasters, then you can use these multiple times, and because it's you're only putting a little bit of resin in there and it's not very heavy, we don't actually need to screw any of it down. So we're just going to glue this down, and the glue and the silicone that you put around it will hold it in place. And they're not difficult to make, guys. You can do it at home with basic tools and basic knowledge. So as we can see, what we've ended up with now is the mould. We've got 3 different sections for 3 different colours. Run some silicone around the outside, just make sure that run your finger around, make sure it's all in every crack. We just glued it down with hot glue this time, but you can use super glue or anything like that. That's absolutely fine. The important bit is obviously getting all your cracks filled in. Took me about an hour and a half. Be even quicker for you guys if you don't have to cut up the wood yourself. If you just buy it And like I said, you just need to buy it once. So you just buy it once and peel off the tape, and you can reuse it again and again and again. So we can just wait for that to dry now, and we'll just move on to cleaning the wood up. So moving on to wood prep now. I'm very lucky, like I said, I've got these lovely bits of walnut left over from another job, and I've been able to thin them to the correct size, which is about 15 millimeters in proper measurements. It's about half an inch for you guys that use wonky measurements. So I've managed to thin it down. You could probably find yourself some wood that's already plain. You could probably find some blanks for yourself. Now obviously they don't need to be the whole length of your mould. You can just put bits and pieces in there, but each mould obviously will only have one colour in it, unless you want to mix up colours. But this time we're just doing it simple, and trust me, simplicity is the best way of doing things. So now I've moved everything to the pouring room. I'm lucky enough to have a different room for pouring my resin in. It's essentially a lot cleaner than the workshop. Again, I appreciate not everybody's got that. So if you have to pour in the same room as you're doing your cleaning up, then just make sure that you've got everything nice and tidy and clean. And seeing as we are working with wood, we have to seal the edges. Now we can seal the edges with the resin that we are using. A little bit of the resin that you're using just to put on the edges here to stop the bubbles. So now we've done that, we've got our sealed bits of wood over there. We just need to make sure now our silicone has dried. It's been about an hour and a half since I did that, so it's well dried by now. We just need to make sure that the inside of our mould is nice and clean. So you just need to give it a clean out, either use a hoover or a cloth or something like that. Just make sure all the bits are out of it. Then just saw me putting a little bit at the edges here as well. We don't have to do that, it's just a little bit of extra protection, as it were. They're pretty solid in there at the moment. So now we just got to wait for everything to for it to go to the B stage. Yeah, so now all we've got to do is pick a colour. And as you can see, when you've got as many colours as I have, it's actually really difficult. It'd be easier if I only had one or two colours. I guess at some point you just have to make a decision. So I think I've gone for apricot, shimmer violet, which is a bit like a purple, and a Pearl X pearl white. Let's do that. These are Pearl X. I'll stick a link in the description to those two. They're fantastic mica powders to use, and I know those two colours are fantastic. The apricot's a bit of a third choice just to see how it looks. And what we're going to do, or what you're going to see next, is the mixing of the resin. So when I was editing yesterday, I realised that my camera went a bit wonky, and that's why my last little explanation got cut off a little bit early. And I realised that I didn't really explain going to put the resin on the edge and why we do that. Okay, it's a little bit boring, but it needs explaining. So we'll put the resin on the edge of the wood to stop the bubbles coming out. The wood is really porous, obviously, so you need to seal up the wood, but you only need to get it to the B stage. Okay, it's the best way of sealing the wood and not getting any bubbles is the B stage. I've done a video on the best way of sealing the wood, which is where this bit comes from. What is the strongest way, and going to the B stage comes out on top. Now I'll link that one up here so you can watch that one as well, but obviously don't watch that one until you finish this one. So what does the B stage mean? The B stage means that you leave the resin on until it's tacky. Okay, now how long that is depends on the resin that you're using. I use Glass Cast 3 on my ceiling, and that takes about 4 hours to get to the B stage-ish, depending on what you're doing. And if you're using a deep pour resin, the same resin that you're going to use in your pour, then it might take a little bit longer, or it might take a little bit shorter. You just have to wait and see, and wait till it's tacky. That is something you can put your finger on it, use a glove, put your finger on it, and you can just roll it off like that, just a little bit tacky, a bit like tape. Okay, a bit like sellotape, something like that. You can just wipe your finger on it and sort of put it off like that. Hard to explain, but you get what I mean. Now, you also saw there the swirls. Okay, that was the next day. All right, that was this morning. I did that. Now, that is because the resin that I use, which is Vuba Vista Ocean, can be poured up to 100 millimeters. Now, that's really deep. Therefore, it takes ages to dry, right? It takes ages and ages to harden. If you're using a lesser pour resin, so you can only pour up to say 20 millimeters, it's going to take quicker to cure, and therefore your swirls that you put in will take a shorter time, if you know what I mean. So you'll pour it, and then you'll wait about 4 or 5 hours, and then you put the swirls in. Whatever resin that you're using, because there are loads and loads, the best way of putting your swirls in is babysitting it. So that means basically it's boring as hell, because you've got to wait a couple of hours, put your swirls in, and then see if they stay. Now, if they stay longer than about 10-15 minutes, they will stay forever. Okay. Now, you will have to work out yourself how long that is. All right, and that depends on the resin that you're using. All right, so and that's it basically. I think I've covered everything. If I haven't covered anything, if you've got any questions or anything, stick them in the comments and I'll answer them as best I can. You can go to my Facebook page. You can message me on our Resin Works page, Woodstock Resin Works page. I'll always answer, and I'm always happy to help. What you just saw there was running it through the wide belt sander. Now, I appreciate again that not everybody's got a wide belt sander, probably no one, but that's your next step, is to flatten them somehow. Now, you can do this with a normal orbital. You can do it as well using a router sled, but not many people have got those either. But just take your time with an orbital, or even if you're feeling really brave, you can do it by hand. It will take you a long time though. You know, the wide belt sander took me 8 minutes, so that's why I do it. It's just to make things quicker. But if you're making them for yourself, you know, take your time. You can do it by hand. Just make sure to sand them when they're long like this before you cut them, because it's easier to do that on a long piece than it is on a short piece. So next thing you'll see is them cutting them to size. I'm going to do it on a saw, electric saw, but you can do this by hand saw if you want to. Just take your time, and we can clean up the edges later on. While we're here, I just want to make a point about health and safety. Please do, when you're working with resin, take all the safety precautions. When you're working with resin, use your gloves. When you are sanding resin, you need a mask at least, and just generally be careful. You do not want this stuff in your lungs. When you've done all that, you should end up with something resembling this, 100 by 100 square, and you are allowed yourself a cup of coffee. After you've finished your coffee, we can crack on with the sanding. We're going to start at 120 grit, and we're only going to go to 320 or 340, I never remember which one that is, 320. We are going to be putting Osmo oil on this, on these. There are many different types of finishes that you can choose, but Osmo is one of my favourites because it goes on really well. But I would suggest that you get yourself some mesh pads. I use these 3M ones, they're 3M extract pads, and they are fantastic. So that's the next thing you're going to see. Sanding, more sanding. Right, just got to finish them off, and there are many different ways of finishing your coasters. Lots of different oils and all sorts of stuff. You can use a polyurethane varnish. Don't like that myself, but it can be done. A very popular one is Rubio Monocoat. It's pretty good, to be fair, but it stinks. You can use Oddy's oil. It's very expensive, but very good. My personal favourite is Osmo. Many different types of Osmo, and I'll be using a clear gloss today. I do have a top oil as well, which I use on tables and stuff like that, which is a little bit more durable, but it's a bit thick for this application. If you are using an Osmo finish, or even for the Monocoat and the Oddy's oil, you can use a non-abrasive pad. Osmo do one themselves called the Osmo Super Pad. It's pretty good, but I get just as good a finish out of the cheaper version, which is just a non-abrasive white pad. So you can get them on eBay or Amazon. You just need a teeny bit of Osmo on there. A little bit goes a very long way, and you just can rub it in with your pad, and leave it for 10-15 minutes and then give it a wipe over with a clean part of your pad. I'm not doing that today because I've got 18 of them to do. It takes a long time. I'm going to be spraying mine on. So what I'll do is I will mix a little bit with a little bit of thinner so it goes through the gun properly. That's the next thing you're going to see. And then we're done. So thanks very much for watching. I hope that you get on very well with your own coasters, and I hope that you've learned something. I think I've covered everything. If I haven't, if you've got any other questions, just give us a comment. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks guys, and I'll see you next time. Bye!